So the novel is about a young man from Maine, from New England, who is going away to college, and he's leaving his small town behind. And he arrives on the campus of an unnamed uh, university, which is an Ivy League university, but I deliberately didn't want the book to be about any specific university. And he arrives there. He's quite naive and inexperienced. He has some of the traits of a sort of typical, I suppose, overachieving freshman who belonged to a lot of clubs and uh, uh, works very hard to get good grades in school. Didn't have a lot of extracurricular experiences or maybe the best social skills. And he arrives in this place where the students are forbiddingly sophisticated. Some of them are from New York and have gone to elite prep schools. And many of them are very comfortable swimming in the sea of a hookup and party culture that he's never encountered before. And he gets involved on really the first night that he's on campus with a young woman, a fellow freshman, uh, and uh, and he has also has met on a freshman orientation trip another fellow freshman, another young woman, and the novel sort of charts his hesitations and flirtations and amorous suffering in his relationships with these two young women, while at the same time uh, charting his relationships with his friends and his roommates, and in particular, a young guy from the Midwest whose parents own a restaurant and who's on the golf team and who's sort of a very genuine and sincere and unusually mature young person, and then another figure who's more of a rival to the main character, Colin, and who is intellectually very sophisticated and quite precocious in his understanding both of books and I suppose of life, but at the same time very self-deluding and willfully eccentric.
Mm-hmm. In your experience, you went to Yale, correct?
That's right.
Did you experience this sort of intense self-consciousness when you first went there? Is that something from your personal experience?
You know, I'm sure I did, and I'm sure. I mean, I think I'll tell you an experience that really was important to me to understanding what I must have experienced at that time, because it can be difficult to sort of have a direct connection to your first person subjective experience of things 15, 20 years in the past. But I went to a bachelor party, to a wine tasting with a bunch of people who I had been at school with. And I was in a car with several of them, and we started to talk, and I found myself slipping into this mode, this kind of super ironic mode of being and talking and joking. And I was kind of horrified. It was a little bit like an out-of-body experience to realize that this must have been how I always was when I was back in college, sort of keeping everything at a distance, hyper aware of the possibility that I might say something that would be regarded as foolish, and trying to make sure that there was always plausible deniability with everything that came out of my mouth. And I think that and then the experience in the present of, I mean, we can, different people feel these things to different degrees and in different social situations, but actually a lot of the feelings that I attribute to my character Colin as a freshman in college are feelings that I've had since in other situations, perilous social situations. So my sense was that somehow this postmodern irony that was just typical of the 90s, the late 90s, the time that I was in college, I did not understand this at the time, but looking back and having a couple of experiences where I sort of found myself slipping back into that mode, I sort of was able to connect that with the experience of human respect and self-consciousness, and to realize, oh my gosh, postmodern irony was just, it was the situation that we were all in, of being at a place without our parents, without any set rules, without any scripts, a whole bunch of us from different backgrounds being thrown together, and always some very scornful, sort of sophisticated people who are setting the tone. It really, postmodern irony just emerges naturally uh, in a setting like that. It's kind of um, it's a it's a way of being when you're not quite sure what your next move should be, and you're waiting for other people to let you know that what you're saying is okay. So I came from a very small town of 800 people on the coast of Maine, and it was a wonderful place to grow up. I realize that now. And in the summertime, it was sort of an exciting place. The population more than doubled, and there were concerts and a lot of people coming in from out of town. But needless to say, they're a very small place. And my first 2 years of college were very difficult because, sort of for precisely the reasons that you're talking about. You encounter people who sort of spoke multiple languages, and they had read Kafka and Samuel Beckett. And the worst part was that they sort of expected that you had also done that, or it seemed to me that you were expected to already have knowledge that you had never acquired, and it's that's a very tricky position to be in. Um, and I ultimately did have a good time in probably the latter 2 years of college. I really started to enjoy myself, found intellectual interests, and a group of friends where I felt more comfortable. But yeah, it was a tricky time, and it's sometimes the very people who are sort of setting a tone that makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable are themselves deeply uncomfortable, and they just manage to, through no fault of their own, in a way, just because they're trying to cope themselves, sort of secrete this sense of unease and discomfort. And that's sort of what the book was about, is that desire to be with the cool kids, to get all the inside jokes, and to have read everything